joining us now to discuss BYU to the Big 12 and what it really means for the Cougars and the rest of the revamped Big 12 Conference is national writer for The Athletic, one of the great college football insiders, Stewart Mandel. Stewart, welcome back to the show. How has this week been for you covering this Big 12 bonanza?
Guys, I'm so excited because I've been coming on your show and other shows in that area for 10 years. And every time I get asked, is BYU going to be able to get in? And now it's happening. We can put that to bed once and for all.
Well, Stewart, it was great to talk to you. Thanks for coming on the show. No, I'm just playing. So obviously this is massive news for BYU and the Big 12. I think when Oklahoma, and I'd like to personally thank the SEC for this, these dominoes.
Yeah.
But right. But Oklahoma and Texas leave. Big 12, there's question, are they going to get plucked? They stick together. They decide to expand. It feels like it's pretty obvious that, yes, that's a power league. They're getting some of the best of the rest. There are a couple teams that wish they were kind of in the mix, right? And maybe the Big 12 still expands with Boise State and Memphis or something. Who knows? But how do you feel about the Big 12 as constituted with those 4 additional teams?
I think it's the best possible outcome. Like you said, at first, everybody was panicking, and we didn't know if at one point, right, Bob Bowlesby accused ESPN of trying to poach their schools for the AAC, and ended up being the other way around. These are the 4 schools I would have picked if in fact people did ask what were 4 schools, and I said these 4, and obviously all very strong for different reasons. People are very hung up on, is this still a power conference? I guess my answer would be, what is that? How do we measure that? Because even before you put the 4 new schools in, the other 8 are stacking up quite favorably right now with the Pac-12 on the field and the ACC outside of Clemson. And that's really what it comes down to. This conference can be a strong conference top to bottom, but can one of those 12 programs, which don't necessarily recruit top 25 classes, which are more developmental programs, become their Clemson, their Alabama, their Ohio State? I have my doubts about that part of it. So if you're talking, it's going to be a very strong football conference. Is it going to produce national championship contenders? That remains to be seen.
Stewart Mandel is with us on BYU Sports Nation. One of our big questions is, when should we expect full integration from BYU and the other 3 AAC schools into the Big 12? Could this happen as early as 2022 for BYU, or are all 4 schools going to unite together and go in 2023? What do you think?
I think it's all up in the air and it's all going to be negotiated. The goal is 2023, but technically the AAC schools have to give 27 months notice, which would put that out of reach. But all of these things are negotiable. With BYU, and I guess I would throw it back to you guys on this one, because they're an independent, they have so many contracts already for future games. And how realistically, how quickly can they unwind all of that? Because they're only going to have room for 3 non-conference games a year.
Yeah, there are clauses that BYU put in anticipating the possibility of this that make it so BYU doesn't even have to pay out to the other team in most, if not all, instances. So I think there's a 12-month clause in there, so I'd imagine BYU will play as an independent next year, so they don't have to pay those out, although we're only 2 weeks into the season. In theory, they could pay the 2 people out. Notre Dame's anticipated to be a game in Vegas. That's a big one regardless. So I'm thinking 23. We're thinking 23 is probably the way for BYU to go, since it's single and ready to mingle, unlike the AAC teams who have to buy their way out in 27 months and all that, right? So it's going to be interesting.
Very important, yeah. It's very important for the Big 12 to get this up and running because of the TV deal that's coming up. You want to be able to show those TV partners, this is our new product, and hey, look, it's pretty good. The Texas OU part of it is the part we just can't figure out. Are they really going to be bound and stay? And you're actually going to have a 14-team league for a couple of years? I know the Big 12, that's what they want. I don't think Texas and OU want that. I think they want to figure out how to get out of there sooner, but it could cost a heck of a lot of money to do that.
Yeah, and in your opinion, Stewart, would it be good for college sports in general to have Oklahoma and Texas in kind of a weird divorced house stay through 2025? Would it make it more compelling, or would it just make it more of a distraction?
I think that's a great question. Andy Staples, my colleague, wrote this yesterday. I hadn't thought about it. with all of the expansion that's happened in this century, nobody has ever stayed as a lame duck in their conference for more than 1 year. And so we're talking about 4. And I think you used a good word in distraction. I don't know if it's a distraction to the rest of the public, but internally, do you really want to be dealing with these dynamics where, technically OU and Texas have a vote on Friday, right? On the new members, even though they're the reasons why they have to do this in the first place. And those ADs are going to keep coming to conference meetings for another 4 years. And I keep saying what's going to really accelerate it is when OU and Texas see how hostile it's going to be when they go into other stadiums this year. It could get really ugly. So, I think it's best that you hit reset and say, this is our new conference. This is what we're going to look like going forward, even though that means you're, losing your 2 big national brands.
We'll see how long it takes for BYU to be a full member with payment or whatever. I don't really care. I just want BYU in the Big 12. They'll figure that out, right? We saw it with Utah when they were integrated into the Pac-12. Oh, by the way, there's a game with Utah Saturday, which has been put on the back burner in the weirdest way possible. BYU is trying to avoid a record 10th straight loss to Utah. Neither team has won 10 in a row ever in the series. So what do you think of the matchup between these 2 teams this Saturday?
I'm looking forward to it. These games are always awesome. It stinks that they didn't play last year. It's really hard to. We saw BYU play a full season last year. We saw Utah play 5 games. We saw Utah play an opener against an opponent that's not very. You can't really gauge them against very much. BYU played a Pac-12 team, so I lean toward the Utes, and it's mostly just because. Maybe Jaron Hall goes on to have a great career there, but I've seen 4 years of Charlie Brewer. I know what he's capable of. And he's got a lot of experience around him, whereas obviously BYU is breaking in a lot of new starters. But that cliche, throw out the records. I would also say throw out the Athlon preseason previews for this game because, there have been many years where this game didn't necessarily reflect, what those teams went on to do that season.
Stewart Mandel is with us on BYU Sports Nation. The Utah Utes play in Salt Lake County. They jokingly call it, or maybe seriously call it, Pac-12 country now. Apparently, Utah County, where BYU plays, is going to become Big 12 country. Do you think that this will enhance the rivalry now that BYU is seemingly a Power 5 school? Or, again, is it already enough of a rivalry?
I mean, it's all right. I always tell people it's the most intense rivalry that just doesn't get enough attention. It's not, obviously it doesn't get the national attention of the Iron Bowl or Ohio State, Michigan or whatnot, but man, those fans go at each other. and it's a good question because a lot of that over the last decade has been however you want to call it, jealousy, resentment, Utah fans, sticking it in their face that they're a power conference school and BYU is not. I just think it'll be good for the rivalry because I think this is going to improve recruiting for BYU and, that they should become, you shouldn't have 10-game losing streaks when you're able to recruit at the level they will. So yeah, I think it's good for college football. I think it's great that BYU, who I've always said is a Power 5 school without the Power 5 affiliation, won't have that stigma, if you will, anymore. And by the way, underrated aspect of all this, coming in 2023, we hope, Big 12 after dark.
Ooh!
Right?
Yep.
Yes.
BYU is going to help get some of those Big 12 games in that 10 p.m. Eastern window.
Oh yeah, 10:26 specifically. We're so used to these late starts kill us, man. We got church at 9 a.m. the next morning sometimes, little kids. What's going on, man? Yeah. Any big takeaways from week 1 of college football?
Yeah, I mean, I think of all the games, the most impactful was UCLA LSU. We saw the Chip Kelly Oregon rushing game that we used to see at Oregon, and he just seemed confident and happy again, and given how the rest of the Pac-12 struggled, really gives you some reason to think they can really contend in that conference. And then obviously, exact opposite for LSU. Sometimes these week 1 results are misleading, but I expected better, especially from their defense. So it has you, rethinking predictions and directions for those 2 teams.
Stewart, we say it every time and we mean it every time. We love The Athletic, the content there. We go there every day Love your Audible podcast. For those that might be new to all of this, how do they find more of your fantastic content?
Just go to The Athletic, and I would highly recommend it right now, theathletic.com, because everything's 50% off, which is $2.99 a month. I mean, especially if you've been following realignment and you've been doing it without The Athletic, I feel bad for you, because Max Olson has been breaking everything on the Big 12 expansion front, and our whole team as well. But it's not just expansion. Obviously, we cover the games, and hopefully people enjoy that. And by the way, we also have every other major sport covered. So theathletic.com.
Yes, sir. Great resource, great website. Thanks for hanging out with us, Stewart, during such a big week, and we'll talk to you again soon.
All right. Thank you, guys.